Nationalism in India. Concept: the First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation, different stands within the movement towards civil disobedience, the sense of collective belonging. Section A. The First World War, Khilafat and non-cooperation. The First World War was fought between 1914 to 1918. It was a turning point in the history of national movement and creating a new political and economic situation. National movement. It influenced new social groups and developed new modes of struggle. It offered opportunity to demand concession from Britain. It resulted in hardship. Hardships suffered during the World War. Huge increase in defense expenditure, rise in prices, double of what they were in 1913. Result: great suffering to common man. Famines or crop failures. 1918 to 1921. Results: according to census 1921, 12 to 13 million people died. New idea: Satyagraha. Satyagraha was a novel way of fighting the colonial rule. It was a mass agitation, non-aggressive and peaceful, against injustice and oppression. Since India could not match Britain in force of arms and violent courts would not win independence, Gandhiji adopted a new idea, that was Satyagraha. Satyagraha means insistence of truth. According to Mahatma Gandhi, Satyagraha was not a weapon of weak but of the strong. It was not a physical but moral force. Gandhiji organized Satyagraha movements. Gandhiji's first Satyagraha was in Champaran district of Bihar in 1916. In this Satyagraha, peasants rose against the unjust plantation system. His second Satyagraha was in Kedah district in Gujarat. It was in 1917. Relaxation of taxes due to famine was the major demand. His third Satyagraha was in Ahmedabad in 1918. It was conducted in favor of cotton mill workers. The Rowlatt Act. In 1919, the Imperial Legislative Council passed the act despite the opposition. The Rowlatt Act gave the government immense powers to detain political prisoners without trial and repress political activities. Response of Gandhiji: he wanted a non-violent civil disobedience movement against such a repressive law. He organized a Hartal on April 6, 1919. Consequence of the Hartal: rallies organized in various cities, workers strike in railway workshops, shops closed down, the British government panicked and arrested nationalists, police fired in Amritsar on April 10th on a peaceful procession. Results: attacks on post offices, banks and railways. General Dyer imposed martial law in Amritsar. 13 April 1919. Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place in this date. Peaceful meeting was fired upon by General Dyer after blocking all the exit points. Hundreds of innocent people got killed. Basis of massacre: General Dyer wanted to strike terror in the hearts of people. Result: it led to strike, clashes with the police and attacks on government buildings. Hence Gandhiji called off the movement. The Khilafat movement. Gandhiji wanted to launch a more broad-based movement for bringing Muslims under the umbrella of a united national movement. He took up the Khilafat movement, wherein Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali found it in March 1919 to defend it. Gandhiji convinced Congress to join this movement. Khilafat Issue. The First World War, the Ottoman Turkish Empire was defeated. A harsh treaty was imposed on the Turkish Emperor, the Khalifa, the spiritual head and the protector of the holy places. The empire was dismembered by 1920. Methods of non-cooperation. Movements to unfold in stages, surrender of all government titles, boycott of civil services, army, police, courts and legislative councils, schools and foreign goods. In case of government repression, a full disobedience movement to be launched. Mobilization of popular support for the movement under Gandhiji and Shaukat Ali. Section B. Different stands with the movements. Began in January 1921, Many social groups participated. All answered the call of Swaraj. Each had their own aspiration. The movement in towns. Middle class took up the fight for Swaraj. Students in thousands left schools and colleges controlled by the government. Headmasters, teachers resigned. Lawyers gave up practices. Council elections boycotted. Effect on economic front. Foreign goods boycotted. Liquor shops picketed. Foreign clothes burned. People discarded wearing of foreign clothes. Indian textile mills and handloom increased production to meet the demands. Import of foreign clothes halved between 1921 and 1922. Its value dropped from 102 to 57 crores. Slowing down of the movement. Many reasons. Khadi was more expensive than the mass-produced milk clothes. The poor couldn't afford it. The absence of food. Indian institutes, teachers and students joined the government institutions. Lawyers also decided to attend the courts. The movement in the countryside. The non-cooperation took over the struggles of peasants. Each struggle was against a different target. Some struggles became violent, which was against Gandhian principle. All the actions were taken in the name of Mahatma Gandhi. The peasant movement, because of their different aspirations and interpretations, advocated violence. The peasant persuaded people to wear khadi and give up drinking. Awadh peasants, led by Baba Ramchandra, against talukdars and landlords who demanded high rents, forced them to do beggar and work on workers' farms without any payment. Tenants had no security of revenue, are regularly evicted. The peasants demanded a reduction of revenue, abolition of beggar, and social boycott of oppressive landlords. Organized Nai Dobi Bandhs. In 1920, Jawaharlal Nehru began going around the villages in Awadh, talking to villagers and trying to understand their grievances. October. The Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up by Jawaharlal Nehru and Baba Ramchandra. Within a month, 300 branches had been set up in different villages around the region. Tribal peasants. In the Godang hills of Andhra Pradesh, militant guerrilla movement spread in 1920. The colonial government had closed large areas of forest, preventing people from entering the forest to graze their cattle or to collect fuel wood and fruits. This enraged the hill people. When the government forced them to do beggar for road building, the hill people revolted. They were led by Alluri Sitaram Raju. He talked of the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi and said he was inspired by the non-cooperation movement and persuaded people to wear khadi and give up drinking. He asserted that India could be liberated only by the use of force, and he attacked police stations, attempted to kill British officers, and carried out guerrilla warfare for achieving Swaraj. Raju was captured and executed in 1924. The movement in the plantation. Workers had their own idea of Swaraj, their agitation and example. Plantation workers in Assam agitated for the right to move freely and not to be confined to the gardens they worked in. The British thus passed an Inland Immigration Act 1859 to prevent them from leaving the plantation without permission. They raised slogans demanding Swatantra Bharat and chanted Gandhiji's name and emotionally related to non-cooperation. Their identification with Gandhiji and movement went beyond their local units. They believed Gandhi Raj was coming. Everyone would be given their land in their own villages. The British thus passed an Inland Immigration Act 1859 and prevented them from leaving the plantation without permission. Their agitation took the form of leaving the plantation and moving towards their village. Result: they were caught by the police and brutally beaten up. The non-cooperation movement was called off by Gandhiji in 1922 due to the Chauri Chaura incident near Gorakhpur. Section C. Towards civil disobedience. After the withdrawal of the non-cooperation movement, the Congress leaders wanted to end mass struggle and fight British rule by participating in the election to the provincial councils set up in 1919 by Government of India. Formation of Swaraj Party. C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru founded Swaraj Party within the Congress to fight the elections for the councils and demanded reforms. Younger leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose pressed for full independence. Two factors that shaped Indian politics towards the late 1920s. There was worldwide economic depression. Agriculture prices touched bottom between 1926 and 1930. Farmers could not sell their products, and the countryside was in turnout. The British Council adopted a statutory commission under Sir John Simon in 1927. It was to look into the function of the constitutional system in India. The commission was all white with not a single Indian member. Mahatma Gandhi gave the call for civil disobedience movement. He chose salt as the symbol of unity of the nation. He declared the salt tax imposed was the most inhuman act. Before starting the movement on 31st January 1930, he wrote a letter to then the Viceroy Lord Irwin making 11 demands. His demands covered every class, industrialist to peasants. Why salt? Salt is consumed by both by the poor and the rich. It is one of the most essential items of food. The government had the monopoly over its production. Mahatma Gandhi called a tax on the salt as the most repressive act of the British government. Newspapers carried day-to-day report of the effect of Gandhiji's speech on the villages he passed through. It is said that 300 Gujarat officials resigned their posts in answer to Gandhiji's appeal. On 6th April 1930, Gandhi reached Dandi, a small village on the Gujarat sea coast, and he ceremonially broke the salt law by boiling water and manufacturing salt. A golden moment in the history of the Indian national movement, a pinch of salt that shook a mighty kingdom. The civil disobedience movement began this gesture. Action taken by the British government. Giving into action and arrested the Congress leaders one by one. Jawaharlal Nehru was arrested on 14 April. On 23 April 1930, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, a staunch follower of Gandhiji, led a massive demonstration of Kudai Kidamat Guards, known as Red Shirts, was arrested. The soldiers of the Garwal regiment refused to fire on the unarmed crowd, who forced the armored cars and police firing bravely. On 4th May 1930, Gandhiji was arrested, which led the industrial workers in Solapur, attacked the police post, municipal buildings, law courts, and railway stations. A frightened and shaken British government responded with a policy of brutal repression. About 1 lakh people were arrested. The government tried to defuse the situation by making Viceroy Lord Irwin to sign a pact called the Gandhi-Irwin Pact on 5th March 1931. Gandhiji agreed to attend the Roundtable Conference in London, and the government agreed to release all political prisoners. Gandhiji attended the second Roundtable Conference in 1931, but he returned disappointment and resumed the civil disobedience movement. The movement lasted a year, and by 1934 it had lost its momentum. Congress was declared illegal. Most of its leaders, including Jawaharlal Nehru and Abdul Ghaffar Khan, were put in jail. All boycotts, demonstrations, and meetings were stopped by the British government. How participants saw the movement. Swaraj meant to different social groups who joined the civil disobedience movement in the countryside. Many activities were the rich peasants communities like Patidars of Gujarat and Jats of UP. They were mostly producers of commercial crops, badly affected by the trade depression and falling prices, hence they could not pay the revenue demands of the government. Government refused to reduce the revenue tax, resulted in peasants joining national movements. The fight for independence was related to their grievances, demand for reduction of revenue taxes, greatly disappointed when movement was called off in 1931 without a reduction in taxes. Hence, they refused to join again in 1932. The poor. The depression made them unable to pay the rents to the landlords. Their own income dwindled swiftly. They wanted Congress to help them in getting the unpaid rent remitted. The business classes. Indian industrialists and merchants had made huge profit during the First World War. They now reacted against colonial policies that restricted their trade. They wanted to protection against import of foreign goods. They want a rupee sterling exchange ratio that would discourage imports. They formed Indian Industrial and Commercial Congress in 1920 and the Federation of the Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry in 1927. G.D. Birla and Purushottam Das Thakur Das attacked colonial economic policies and supported movement, gave it financial assistance, refused to buy or sell foreign goods. But the failure of the Roundtable Conference kept their enthusiasm. They worried about socialism among the youth as it would prolong the disruption of the business. Industrial working class. They did not participate in civil disobedience movement except Nagpur. They adopted Gandhian ideas, boycott of foreign goods, as part of their own movement against low wages and poor working conditions. There were strikes, railway workers in 1930, dock workers in 1932. Thousands of workers in Nagpur took part in the letters and boycott campaigns, but the Congress was reluctant to include workers' demand in their struggle as it alienates the industrialists. Women and the civil disobedience movement. 1930 was the year when women entered into the struggle for independence on a massive scale. During Dandi March, thousands of women came out to listen to him. They eagerly participated in protests, marches, picketed foreign clothes and liquor shops. Urban areas they came from high caste families, rural areas they came from rich peasant houses. Before 1930, women who had never stepped out became a familiar sight in the civil disobedience movement. Congress did not encourage them or give them any important posts within the organization. The limits of the civil disobedience. The 1930 campaign saw one social group who did not actively participate in it. They were the untouchables, now called Dalits or the oppressed. Mahatma Gandhi called them Harijans and declared that India would not achieve Swaraj for 100 years if untouchability was not completely eliminated. He organized Satyagraha to secure them entry to the temples, access to the public wells, tanks, roads, and schools. The elites wanted political solution to their problems. They demanded reservation of seats in educational institutions, separate electorate to choose their own candidates to the legislative council. They wanted to solve their social problems. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the leader of the Dalits, formed an association in 1930 called the Depressed Class Association. He clashed with Gandhiji at a second roundtable conference by demanding separate electorates for the Dalits, which was later accepted by British Council. Gandhiji began a fast unto death. He believed that Dalits would never be integrated into the society if they got separate electorates. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar finally signed a pact with him on September 1932 called Pune Pact. What is Pune Pact? It gave reserved seat in the provincial and central legislature council to the depressed classes. They were to be voted in by general electorates. Muslim political organization also kept away from civil disobedience movement. Reason: Muslims felt alienated from the Congress after the decline of non-cooperation and Khilafat movement. From mid-1920, the Congress seemed to be more visibly associated with the Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. There were Hindu-Muslim clashes and riots in many cities, which further worsened the relations between the two communities. Attempts were made in 1927 by the Congress and Muslim League to form an alliance. It seemed possible, as M.A. Jinnah, one of the leaders of the League, to give up the demands for separate electorates if Muslims were assured reserved seats in the Central Assembly. Representation in proportion to population in Muslim-dominated provinces, especially in Bengal and Punjab. Negotiation failed in 1928 when M.R. Jayagar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed efforts at compromise. Hence, civil disobedience movement started in an atmosphere of distrust and suspicion between the two communities. Muslims feared their culture and identity submerged under the majority dominance. Section D: The sense of collective belonging. How does a sense of belonging develop in the minds of the people who belongs to different communities or regions and speak different languages? Answer lies in the fact that when people believe that they all are the part of the same nation, and when they discover common bonds that unite them, then nationalism grips the hearts and minds of the people. What are these beliefs and common bonds? Collective belonging comes through the experience of common struggle, a common history and fiction, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols are the factors giving rise to nationalism. Symbols. Certain figures and images became the identity of a nation. Example, Statue of Liberty, USA. What is the symbol of India? Bharat Mata. In the 20th century, when nationalism was its height, it was this image which aroused people. Bakrin Chandra Chattopadhyaya created the image in his song Vande Mataram, a hymn in praise of Mother India written in 1870 in a novel, Anand Mat. Song was sung by people of Swadeshi movement. Abhinandanatha Tagore painted Bharat Mata as a calm, composed, divine and spiritual figure. It became a symbol of a nation for whom people were ready to sacrifice. Folk song and folklore. They also became a symbol of nation and revived people's pride in their culture. Nationalists like Rabindranath Tagore from Bengal, Nadesha Shatri from Madras composed songs, ballads, myths, and folklore. The latter published The Folklore of Southern India. Icons and symbols. Icons and symbols were used in unifying people and inspiring them. Swadeshi movement in Bengal, the tricolor flag was designed red, green, and yellow, had 8 lotuses representing the 8 provinces of the British India, and a crescent moon representing Hindus and Muslims. In 1921, Gandhiji designed the Swaraj flag, tricolor, red, green, and white, had a spinning wheel in the center representing Gandhian ideals of self-help. Reinterpretation of history. Indians began feeling that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history had to be thought about differently. They wrote about the glorious development in the ancient times when art, architecture, science, mathematics, religion, culture, law, philosophy, crafts, and trade had flourished. The nationalist historian urged the leaders to take pride in India's great achievement in the past and struggle to change the miserable conditions of life under British rule. Conclusion. Gandhiji channelized the anger against the colonial government into a common struggle for the freedom in the first half of the 20th century. He forged unity between the people, continuously tried to resolve the differences and grievances, and tried not to alienate a group. Conflict, disunity was a result of these very efforts at times. But Gandhiji saw the emergence of a nation waiting to be liberated itself from the colonial rule in spite of all its differences.